Hi friends, I'm Abby and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be telling you all about the books that I read in the month of March. So everything I read in the past month, and I thought that I would do it in the order that I read them, and also intersperse some of the things that I got up to in my personal life. Let me know if you like that format. I just thought I would try it out, try and intersperse some of the highlights of my month outside of my reading. But first, as normal, I'll talk through some of my statistics. So in March, I read 7 books, coming to a total of 3,121 pages. 5 of these books were fantasy, 1 was a paranormal romance, and 1 was a sci-fi. All 7 of the books were adult, and for my star ratings, I had 2 4.5 stars, so they were very close. They were very close to being 5 stars, but they didn't quite hit the mark. 3 4 stars, 1 3 star, and 1 2.5 star. And out of these books, 1 of them finished a series, 3 of them continued in series, 1 of them was a new series, and so my on-the-go series number remains at 30. So 1 finished, 1 new, just keeping things even. So all okay there. And I was doing TBR Star Hop in March. This is Stephanie's TBR game. She played a round for me and I failed. I had 8 books on that TBR and I read 6 of them. So I was too short. I did an attempt, but I did not make it. So I will take a punishment, and the punishment that I will be doing is I will play another round of TBR Star Hop in May with an extra black hole, which is the same rules that Stephanie applies, so that if she fails a month, she has this as her punishment. TBR Star Hop will be back next month. Hopefully, I will be able to succeed second time around, but that is the plan. Let's talk through what I did read and what I was successful in doing, and how that all went. So I started off the month by reading Glow by Raven Kennedy, the 4th book in the Plated Prisoner series. The Plated Prisoner series is a fantasy romance following a main character, Oren, who at the beginning of the book is sort of the prized pet of King Midas. She lives in this gold touch kingdom. She feels like he saved her, and so she doesn't realise that she has actually been kept pretty much as a prisoner. And the series very much goes down a very different path. Where we are in book 4 is a very different place now to book 1. Book 1, I feel, pretty much sets things up as a bit of a dark prequel to the rest of the series, and then the series really gets going in book 2. I really liked book 3, Gleam. I think that one had just a lot of elements that I really liked, with a castle setting, the romance elements I really liked, the sort of discovering more of the powers I really liked, but I wasn't so much a fan of the 4th book. So I think this was fine, but it was way too long. It was way too long. I mean, I think I've given this 3 stars, but maybe it's closer to a 2.5 star. Just because it was so bloated. We spent a large chunk of the book dealing with trauma. It's not that I don't think it was done well, I just think it dragged on too long. And I get that when you're going through trauma, it takes a long time to heal. And so realistically, you do need to have that period of time. But it felt like it just went on way too long. That we were 500 pages into the book and nothing had really happened, because we were just in the same setting, trying to come to terms with this trauma, until we got to the the final quarter of the book, where things actually started happening. So it just dragged on a little bit. There were some questionable choices from the love interest, which has made me not like him, and I was really rooting for this pairing in Gleam, but some of the things that he didn't hit just made me not root for him. And I get that I get it, he is end goal. But at some points in here, I was just like, I hate you. I really dislike you for the choices that you are making. That is not what you want from your love interest. You don't want to be hating the love interest. You want to be rooting for them as a pairing. And I really was not doing that. So my end goal, I feel like I want our female main character to be alone and just get rid of all the men. But I don't think that's necessarily a very popular opinion. So very mixed emotions with this. So in my personal life, I was away with work whilst I was midway through reading this, which I realised that when I'm travelling with work, I don't read. So then the books feel even longer, because I read a little bit on the plane, and then I don't read for like the days that I'm away, and then I read again on the plane. So I don't know if that makes books feel even more bloated, because I had the same issue with The Jasmine Throne. So I need to figure out what I do with the books I take with me whilst I'm travelling for work, because I definitely need to take books with me, but I don't want it to be detrimental to my reading experience. But anyway, so I was travelling for work, so I went to Andorra and to Spain, so here's some lovely pictures of that. It was a great work trip. I love what I do. I love what I do. So that was the first book. Next, I read Crest by Ice, the third book in the Side Changeling series. This is the buddy read that I'm doing with Vish and Sam. And this was my favourite in the series so far. I just really rooted for and liked the pairing that we had in this. I think we had some interesting developments in the world in general, and I just was really rooting for this pairing. I think they were well matched. I think the pacing of their relationship was done well. In the previous few books, we have had a male changeling to female Psy pairing, whereas in this one we had a female changeling and male Psy, and I feel like that dynamic worked better, because with the male changelings they're just very possessive, very alpha male, and that grates on me. Whereas having it this way round, it felt like they were more even, and it wasn't super intense, super fast. This was definitely easily my favourite in the series so far. I really enjoyed this one. I then read The Adventures of Amina Al-Sirafi by Shannon Chakraborty, my most anticipated release of the year. And this we're following our main character Amina, who is a retired pirate captain who gets back onto the high seas to save the daughter of an old friend. I have some mixed emotions on this, and I feel that's quite controversial to say. So, I love the David Bad trilogy. I rave about the David Bad trilogy. The David Bad trilogy is like the peak of the peak, the creme de la creme. It is my favourite, one of my favourite series ever. Like, I adore that series. So I had some very high expectations going into this. Like, probably too high expectations. And this, I think, was really good, but it did not compare to the David Bad trilogy for me. It's not a favourite of all time, unfortunately. I think there's lots of elements in this that I really like. Like, I like the world. It's a Middle Eastern inspired world, sort of in the 12th century. So I really liked the world and the magic system that we get in this. It has similarities to the David Bad magic system, and I think you can tell that it is the same world, that they are completely separate series, but the magic system between the two is the same, and that I really liked. So I liked the mythology, the lore, the magical artifacts, that whole aspect that we get in here. I really liked. I really like Shannon Chakraborty's writing style. I really gel with the way that she crafts stories and the way that she writes them. However, I don't think I'm a massive fan of a quest plotline. In terms of like my fantasy preferences, and this was what I've realised whilst I was reading this, is that for a quest plotline, the characters get the quest at the beginning, and then they go through the journey to get to the end destination, and they have some trials and tribulations along the way to the end destination. But you know pretty much from the beginning of the book where it's going to end, because you get the destination right at the beginning. You are told this is where you've got to get to. This is where your quest is going to end. And part of me maybe prefers when that's a little bit more unknown, where you don't have from the very beginning your destination given to you. And so sometimes it felt like we were working to that. We were working through the whole book to get to that point, which is the nature of a quest, which I get that. So I do think this did the quest well. Like, I've given this 4 stars, but it just didn't suit my preferences, I don't think. It did sometimes feel like, okay, here's our quest. This is where we've got to get to. How can we make this longer? Oh, let's have this like surprise thing, just like surprise our characters out of the blue. Let's just throw this in, and then that will dictate where they go for 100 pages. Let's throw this in. Okay, that's another 100 pages. Okay, now we can get to the end of the quest. That is the nature of this as a plot, but maybe I wanted something a bit different. Maybe I just wanted more David Bad. I don't know, but I did like it, but I didn't love it, and I feel a little bit sad about that. It wasn't the 5 stars that I wanted it to be, but hopefully the rest of the series could maybe get there. I do feel as though this wraps up really well, that I like how it's satisfying in the way that it concludes, but you know that there's more to come, and hopefully that the rest of the series could maybe get to that 5-star mark. And I do think The City of Brass in the Days of Bad World is the weakest in the series, with books 2 and 3 being stronger, so potentially the same could happen again, and I can really hope for that. I then went to a wedding in Paris. My cousin got married, which was absolutely like beautiful wedding. It was just like a beautiful, lovely day, and it was just lovely being in Paris and being there with the whole family and having the whole family come together for a really like positive occasion, and just spending all our time there, and loved that. So that's what I had in my personal life, which disrupted my reading a little bit of The Lost Metal by Brandon Sanderson. So I read this over that weekend, so a little bit before that weekend, a little bit after that weekend, but around that time I read The Lost Metal, the 4th and final book in Mistborn Era 2. This I really enjoyed, this I really liked. I was thinking this might have been 5 stars up until we got to like the final quarter maybe. I was really enjoying the first probably 3/4 of this to like a 5-star level, and then I found the Sanderlanche, the ending, was my disappointing bit of the book, and that's what brought it down to like a 4 stars. Normally I feel as though the Sanderlanche, the ends of his books, are his like peaks, is where he like triumphs. The plot of Mistborn Era 2 is that it's you're following Wax and Wayne in this sort of western setting 500 or so years after the events of Mistborn Era 1. So it's set in the same magic system, but a very different world and situation now, and this is concluding all of the events that we've been working up to. There are definitely a lot of Cosmo references in here. I was reading this and I was like, all the Cosmo references, these are coming out thick and fast. This really feels like a Cosmo book. I really feel like The Hero of Ages, which is the final book in Mistborn Era 1, feels like a really satisfying conclusion to that era in and of itself, that you feel like that whole series wraps up. Whereas I don't find that the conclusion here is as satisfying, because it feels like there are quite a few loose threads that are not wrapped up here. I mean, I get like there were definitely loose threads at the end of Mistborn Era 1, but I feel like because this is a Cosmo novel, which is one of the aspects that I really enjoy in the first 3/4, but when we get to the end of it, you know that there is so much more still going on outside of these characters that is continuing on in the Cosmere, and so I don't feel as though it gave me like that satisfying conclusion that I think I wanted, because it still feels as though that these characters have more to go through, because there are still so many Cosmo things going on out in the world. So I in some ways still felt as though their journey needs to keep going, because there was still so much happening. And I think for me, I have read nearly all of the books in the Cosmo now, apart from Rhythm of War. So I was spotting the Cosmo references and I was enjoying them. But I don't know how much you would enjoy this if you had just been reading the Mistborn books. And if you hadn't read other books in the Cosmo, whether you would be getting confused by things or whether things would be clicking in the way that it clicked for me. It's a positive and a negative that I was enjoying spotting these Cosmo links, because they were not just Easter eggs anymore, they were pretty obvious. But how would someone that has just been reading the Mistborn books deal with that? Yeah, I mean, I did like where we got to. I did like the ending. I just it wasn't as satisfying maybe as I wanted it to be, but I did really enjoy the bulk of the story. I did really enjoy like where we got to. So much so that I did then go and reread The Emperor's Soul in Arcanium Unbounded. I was spotting some links. So I was like, it's been a little while since I've read The Emperor's Soul. How about I just go back and reread it? So I listened to The Emperor's Soul on audiobook. I really love The Emperor's Soul. I think it's a very, very well done novella. It's a novella that makes me want more. Like, I want more from that. Like, I feel like it could be a full-length book, but maybe it can't, because I loved it the way that it is, and it's 4.5 stars as a novella. I really like the characters, I like the pacing in it, I like where we get to, I like the magic that is explored in The Emperor's Soul. So really enjoyed my reread of that. Made me happy to like spot those different connections. And if you haven't read The Emperor's Soul, I would really recommend reading it before reading The Lost Metal. Definitely read The Emperor's Soul before reading The Lost Metal, because there are links. I then read The Tyranny of Faith by Richard Swan, the second book in the Empire of the Wolf trilogy, and I really liked this one. So this is a sequel to The Justice of Kings, which I read last year, and I do have a standalone review for The Justice of Kings, which I can link. But this one was a step up for me. It was definitely a step up. Like, I think I gave The Justice of Kings maybe like 3.5 stars, whereas this I'm giving 4.5 stars. Like, I really liked this one, more than I expected to going in. The Justice of Kings, you're following Conrad von Volt, who is a justice in the world. In this world, their empire has expanded across many different countries, and justice go around and mete out justice across the lands. And we're following him, but it is told through the perspective of his apprentice, Helena. The first book is quite an isolated setting in this small town as they investigate this murder there, and we're just introduced to the characters. This definitely becomes a lot wider and bigger, which is what I really wanted from it. Like, I wanted to understand the world a bit more. I wanted to see more of it. We travel to the capital, we travel around the world a little bit more. We again have a sort of murder mystery plotline. We get to see how the big evil is flowing into the plot a bit more, and what the implications of that are going to be. We explore more of the magic. It becomes sort of this like horror fantasy with the magic system, and this sort of necromancy and these horrific creatures, which I really thoroughly enjoyed exploring. I think I preferred Helena in this as well. So the perspective of it is Helena is the young apprentice, but we are told from the perspective of older Helena narrating her life and the events that have gone on in her past. So most of the book, it's sort of you're going along in these events, and then we'll have interjections from older Helena sort of looking back on the events and going, oh, if only we knew, or I get that I was naive at the time. If I had known what I knew now, then I would have acted differently. And so it's really interesting having this older perspective look back on a younger self and sort of critique her younger self, or reflect on her younger self and go and look at the actions that she had done. So that I really like, and I really like that as a narrative technique. I feel like in the first book, Helena was very naive, which makes sense for where she was in life, and I feel as though you can definitely tell how she has grown into this next book. I definitely like seeing how the characters' dynamics are shifting and changing, how they interacted in book one to how they're interacting now, and how their opinions on each other. I liked the stakes in this. There was just so many elements in this that I really thoroughly enjoyed. So if you've read The Justice of Kings, I would definitely recommend continuing on to read The Tyranny of Faith. If you were like me as well and you were a little bit on the fence with Justice of Kings, where you liked it but you weren't in love with it, I would definitely recommend continuing. And I'm now really looking forward to book 3 coming out. It's going to be another year, but this really surprised me with how much I enjoyed this. Also at this time I started Ramadan, which has been like my end of the month. It has been fasting, so I have been struggling a little bit with my reading in this final chunk of the month because I've been tired all the time. I feel as though, like, it's my 3rd year doing Ramadan now. My partner is Muslim, which is why I do it alongside him, and I feel like the first 2 years I was just hungry the whole time, but I was fine. Like, I didn't have any other effects. It was just that I was really hungry. This year, I think I've been managing that hunger okay. Like, I haven't been feeling hungry, but my concentration has not been great. My tiredness, I am tired all the time. So I feel as though I have very different effects to doing it this year as opposed to the past 2 years. So by the time I finish work, my brain is just not there, and so the 2 hours until we get to like 7:30, which is when we can eat, I am like, I can't do anything, I can't concentrate. I'm just going to binge Below Deck, which is what I've been doing, binging Below Deck. And then after dinner it's like 9 p.m. and I'm like, okay, maybe I'll read for a little bit, go and read, and then I'm like, I'm asleep. So normally I'd go to sleep at like 11 p.m. It's now like 10 p.m. So I'm losing that whole time when I would normally be reading because I'm just sleeping. That has been taking over like the final chunk of the month. That has been impacting my reading a little bit. So like the Lost Metal, I had like 100 pages left to go for like 3 days because I just couldn't finish it, because by the time I got home from work I was knackered. And one night I went to bed at like 8 p.m. like I struggled, I was so tired, and I had such a headache that I could hardly even eat by the time I got to the eating time, and then I was like, right, sleep. I was just asleep. So it's definitely been impacting my reading a little bit. But the final book that I finished in the month of March was Far Sector by N.K. Jemisin and the art by Jamal Campbell. I have mixed feelings on this. I just don't think this was for me. I don't think it was for me. I don't know loads about DC Comics and this world. I don't know much about Green Lantern. The Green Lantern universe is just not something I know loads about going in. So I don't know if this was the best starting point for me for Green Lantern lore. I don't know if my brain and graphic novels click that well. Graphic novels are not something that I read a lot of. I am predominantly a prose reader, and I've noticed that I've struggled a little bit with Lore Olympus, but I'm enjoying the plot and the art style a lot with Lore Olympus. Whereas I did like the art style in here. I think the art is pretty. I do like the art style, and I don't have anything against the plot in here, but I really struggle with graphic novels to follow them, which I don't know why, but I really struggle to follow the narrative. And so I'm like looking at it and I'm like, but what do you mean? And I would think it should be easy because it is just images and then there's the speech bubbles, but I struggle to follow them, especially when there are changes in scene. Like I think when I'm in a scene, I am okay, I can get that these people are having a conversation, this is what's going on, but then you have a flashback and you don't tell me it's a flashback, and I really struggle. When we change scenes, I struggle. When we go, that point, I'm like, oh, wait, we're in a completely different setting now. And I really struggle with that change. I feel like I need more of like an explanation of 10 years ago in this setting, this. So then you know that it's a flashback. Whereas I'm going along and I'm like, but how have we got from this conversation to here? And this did that. And I have noticed it in Lore Olympus as well. So I don't think it's unique to this. So that's why I'm questioning whether it's me. I mean, I don't read a lot of graphic novels to know what's me and what's a graphic novel's issue. But there were moments in this where I was like, I'm really struggling to follow what's going on here. I also think I struggled a little bit with the fighting scenes to figure out what was actually happening. You can just have a lot on a page, and I sometimes struggle to read what exactly is going on in this. So that's why I just feel like I don't know if this was for me. I don't know if graphic novels are for me, and I don't know if this was the best place for me to go with graphic novels. So I feel as though I have given this a rating of like 2.5 stars because I don't think it's going to stick with me. But also I don't feel as though that's probably respective of the book. I don't think I'm the person to really be talking about this because I don't know graphic novels. I feel like my opinions on a fantasy book are much more warranted because I've read multiple fantasy books. I know what works for me, I know what doesn't work for me, I know what works in a fantasy book, whereas I don't have that level of certainty and that level of experience with a graphic novel. So take my opinions on it with a pinch of salt. I'm also 2/3, 3/4 of the way through an 8th book. So I'm currently reading Chain of Gold by Cassandra Clare, not on the TBR, but I wanted to read it. This is a reread for me, so I'm rereading this book so that I can continue on with the rest of the trilogy and finish this series off. This is the many book in the Shadowhunters world. I would say to read this, you have to read The Infernal Devices, which is following the parents of these kids, but maybe you don't have to read the more modern ones. So there's like 9 books set in more modern day, and then there was 3 books prior to this one set in the 1800s, and then you have this series set in the early 1900s. So I am really, this is fun. It is fun, it is angsty, it is, that is what it is. The Shadowhunter world, you follow these groups of people which are descended from angels that fight demons. You have werewolves, you have vampires, you have fairies, you have lots of different magical creatures in it. You have angsty, dramatic relationships between the main characters. And in this you have a wide cast of characters. You have a large friendship group, and you're following each of them and the dynamics that they are going through as these demons take London. So these ones are set in London, which is quite fun. It is fun, like seeing places that I know very well as landmarks in the fantasy world. So I'm enjoying this. I mean, I know where it's going to end because I have read it before, but it was a while ago. So I know where we're heading to. There are definitely some parts that I had forgotten, so it has been worth rereading. And I'm very much looking forward to continuing this series in April. So that is my March. That is my March and some of the highlights from the month. Another highlight is I did go for a lovely brunch with a friend and went book shopping at the same time, and I bought a few books. So that was also another highlight that I did go on a little splurge. So that was my March and what I am working on and what I will continue to work on as we go into April. Let me know how your reading in March has been and what you've been up to, and thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my future videos. Bye!